Thanks, Joe. I love your voice, just so you know. Thanks, everyone, for coming. It's great to be back at FinOps X. This is my second FinOps X, my second FinOps X with Vantage. I've been laughing to myself all week because for the second straight year in a row, like, all anyone can talk about is AI. And somehow we're all still surprised when we got here that we have no idea what's going on and how we're spending so much money. So what we're here to talk about is how to actually understand that a little bit more. Cloud was something that we had a pretty good wrangle on coming into the AI boom. The pricing models were well defined. We were getting to a somewhat predictable spending model with them. And had acknowledgingly known scaling patterns for this. And it was also easy attribution models because everything that we were doing was going to our cost of goods sold. Now with AI, we not only are introducing the most volatile and unpredictable part of our infrastructure, but we also are now having to attribute this back to both our COGS, our R&D, and this is becoming more complex than ever. And what we're starting to realize is that not only do we have to understand and attribute our AI costs as well as cloud, but we have to do it better. So my name is Rem. I lead our product organization at Vantage. We are a FinOps platform with about 30 integrations across cloud, infrastructure, AI. And we've been doing the AI stuff for a long time. We launched our first AI integration with OpenAI in 2023. We launched our MCP server very early in the MCP days, April of 2025. Our AI agent in November of last year. And somehow still, the space is evolving, and we're working with our customers to continue to be able to better observe this space a lot better. I started my journey in consulting, turned to cloud provider. I was with the optics team at AWS, helping some of the largest AWS customers optimize their workloads. And now I'm using all of those principles today at Vantage to build products for people to self-serve their FinOps needs and being able to observe their spend. And that includes customers like Demandbase that are kind of leading the way with observing and utilizing AI. And so exciting to have them here with me. G, I'll hand it to you.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Got a full house here. Thank you very much for joining us, giving this time. Before we start, I just wanted to, I like interactive sessions, but given the timelines, let's keep the questions towards the end. We'll have a question answer slot for this. But if there is a really pressing question, you're like, hey, I don't understand this, what are you talking about? Feel free to raise your hands, and I'll take it directly when there. So my name is Gaurang. Feel to call me G. My background-wise, most of my background has been in tech. I started way back as a telecommunication network planning and systems engineering group. For those who know, it's all the fun data center stuff if you've done that. And then it transposed, it moved to, I traversed a lot of journey within the tech from testing to development to DevOps to reliability engineering. And now I'm at Demandbase. At Demandbase, I am part of this small but a mighty group of people. So it's been led by Michael Walls, Senior Manager of Cloud Engineering, myself, Gaurang, and we have not just humans, but our very own Claudia, our 24/7 agent. She does not ask for leaves. She might have some downtimes, but that's about it. And Claudia integrates with our multi-agent system that we have at Demandbase. So you can ask Claudia anything from, hey, what is the status of my Jira ticket, to how did the pipeline run, to what are my costs for this month, to anything, right? So specifically for FinOps stuff, we do leverage Vantage's MCP server. It's been fantastic. So for any cost-related question, we basically direct it to Vantage MCP to get the answers. And in addition to that, what we have is they have a wonderful instances MCP as well. They have a lot of MCPs, and you should try it out. But they have a lot of wonderful instance MCP where sometimes developers are like, hey, should I use R6G 2x large versus something else? And they want to get an information on what are the hourly costs and all. All of that can be asked through Claudia. And anyone here knows Demandbase? What demand? Oh, wow, yeah. Those one from Demandbase, one from Vantage. So, so if you have ever worked in go-to-market, sales, marketing, B2B advertisement, you probably know us. So in a quick blurb, we are a pipeline engine for AI go-to-market teams. What does that mean? In a very sweet way, short way, it's basically you have a revenue goal, and we help you translate that goal into coordinated action between sales, marketing, advertising teams. And then we tell you what the drivers of your pipeline are, where is the waste, and all of this through one platform. Now, before I go into the problem space, I just want to get a feel of where you all are in your AI journey. So raise your hands if you know or if you can answer how much is your AI spend across providers in whatever duration you like. Well, that's pretty hard. Keep your hands up if you can now tell me how much does it cost you to serve AI to your customers? Well, that's pretty nice. All right, one final question for those hands that are up. Keep it up if right now there's a rogue agent that is running, right, and it's spiking all the cost. Are you able to control it before your bill arrives? Ooh, nice. So this talk is basically about where traditional levers don't work. So most of you here might know, like, hey, what is a reserved instance? What is a CUD? What is a saving plan? All of these are vehicles to help you save. But have you wondered, what about AI? Can I buy reserved tokens? Or can I buy savings plans for token usage? What can I do? Maybe at max, if your spend is really high, you can negotiate some private pricing agreement, but then they will ask you for a commitment, and how do you forecast that, right? So all of these are tough questions. So this specific talk that I'm trying to give you is this gap, and this gap is what most FinOps teams right now are hitting, and it is AI spend that is hard to see, AI spend that is hard to attribute, and AI spend that is hard to control. So let's dive into the problem space. So at Demandbase, when we started this AI journey, it's been a while, so we deliberately let users try whatever they want. It's part of the AI game, right? Because AI is things are going on so fast, new things are coming up very fast. So at one point, we would say, hey, a developer wants to try Anthropic, somebody wants to try Cursor, somebody wants to try Claude through something else. And the list that you see, the list of providers was increasing. And while this was going on, me and Michael were silently like, hey, like, how do we answer if somebody's going to question us? Like, hey, where is this team spending? What is going on? And soon enough, the cost needle moved. And the engines were hot. We started getting questions from leadership, like, hey, can you tell me how much we are spending on AI? How much of it is customer? How much of it is R&D? Which specific team is driving the usage? And we were scrambling, to be honest. And our scramble was real. Not because we didn't know answers to these, but you see the list of providers here. We had like tons of them, and we didn't have a unified view. So it would put us in a bad position if we said, hey, leadership is asking a question, hey, let me wait for 2-3 days to collate all the data and then show it to you. That's too late, right? So we didn't have a unified view, and money was flying. No visibility, no attribution, no answers. I mean, immediate answers, I would say. Second issue that we had was we didn't have a way to act proactively. As our AI journey matured, so people started delivering AI products. It helped. We did AI releases, which really helped our product. But things were moving very fast. Releases were very fast. Models were coming at a fast rate. Entire AI scenario was changing fast. So again, we were proactively thinking. We didn't know how to act, but at least we know how to think. So we were thinking like, what would happen if there is a security issue? Even if there is no security issue, what would happen if there is a bug in my agent, right? Maybe the agent is trying to keep retrying something and the costs are spiking. There might be runaway agents, noisy tenants, inefficient prompts, multiple of reasons, right? And you see a big spike there. Now, if we are going to wait for an anomaly alert, or if we are going to wait for, hey, let the bill arrive and we will know, oh, we spend like $200K in a day, whatever it is, right? It's too late. So we didn't have a way to act proactively. We learned budgets were overrun. There was no accountability. In short, we were reactive, not proactive.
And one thing I'll add as well, like everything that G is mentioning here is very commonplace in the cloud world, like anomaly detection, budgets. All of these are things that, especially our customers, anyone that's been developing in the cloud for a long time, like these are not new. And I think that going into this AI era, like we thought we were prepared for this, and it seemed like a lot of the traditional FinOps levers were going to work for this. But what we've discovered in this is that cloud cost data, as Gaurang was mentioning, is not enough. Like you cannot wait for this. And there are some flavors of this back to like the serverless days when you'd have lambdas that are just going out of control and spitting up costs. Yeah. This is that on steroids, right? This can be amplified many times over. And we've seen that with a lot of things in the news. So especially where our viewpoint is at Vantage and how they are solving this is that the answer is now observability. Observability in FinOps is as close to a similar practice as ever.
Absolutely. So how Demandbase is solving this? And you see that asterisk there, it's deliberate because it's still work in progress. It's a challenging problem to solve. And if you recall from FinOps maturity models, there are no runners. So we are in a phase where we are maturing, and we are solving this as it comes. Familiar, I think it's a very common pattern, but it helps us solve the visibility, control, and attribution problems. So we started thinking, like, what do we do, right? We have so many requests coming in from different directions, so many different providers. How about we channel all these requests through LLM proxy and let that proxy do the visibility, control, and attribution part? And the proxy connects to the different providers. So we have full visibility and control. For those who are not aware of proxy, I'll give you a very simplistic explanation. Think of it as a modern toll booth where cars don't have to stop. Each lane is dedicated to your tenant, and the users can use that lane for that particular tenant. But now that you have a transporter, we can tag you, we can track who is going through my toll booth. And if, let's say, more cars are going or where less cars are going, I can do adjustment, I can put some controls. So it's akin to thinking it as a toll booth in between. So what did it unlock? Yeah, we added a LLM proxy, but did it unlock anything for us? You remember I was talking about people trying different stuff. Everybody wanted to use their own models. Team A like Nova, Team B like Sonnet, Team C like something from Vertex, and someone else like GPT. Now, Of course, there are different libraries available, but if you go provider-specific route, there is no standard API. Now, LLM Proxy allowed us to abstract this and give everyone a standard API. And using that API, they can also dynamically switch models. Although I'll bring this up later, where switching the models also requires a lot more stuff. But right now, it allows you to dynamically switch models if there is, let's say, degraded performance. It might be quota issue or whatever it is, right? It allows you to do that. Yeah, so you have multi-provider configuration. So one config, any backend. Scope proxy keys and attribution boundaries, right? So do people here know scope proxy keys? So I'll break that term into keys, scope keys. So key and the scope, right? So key is basically API token or API itself, API key to access models across different providers. Scope is then what you do is you kind of wrap that key and put a guardrail around it and tell it that, hey, you can only access a particular provider and a particular model. So now things become interesting, right? Because now I have some levels of control where I can say, like, even if you have access to multi-models, just don't go about anywhere and everywhere. This is your scoping, right? And proxy keys, in a way, because these are virtual keys, not the actual provider-provided keys. So what happens is this, in a way, adds a layer where you don't have to use the direct provider keys into your code. You can use the proxy keys. And then you can control the proxy keys at the LLM proxy level. What about the attribution boundaries? So when you want to understand costs in detail, you need certain attribution boundaries, right? I should be able to tell who is my tenant. I should be able to tell who the user within the tenant is, who the agent is. So all this is done through attribution boundaries, and you can define it through tags. So for example, you might want to track cost by a specific agent that is running, right? Now, one way to do it is, what you do is you create a key specific to agent and what it wants to do. So don't share your keys. Create it specific to it, and then add tags to it. At Demandbase, what we do is we have a backstage scaffolder. So whenever a new team wants to create an agent, they go to the scaffolder, and the scaffolder also forces you to add our standard tags that we follow. So now that there are tags on a key, I exactly know which agent is making the call and costing me. Similar to adding tags to the key, I can add headers to my requests that are coming from my tenants, right? So I can add, oh, this is a tenant ID. This is a particular user in the tenant. And all these tags, they wrap into LLM proxy logs, right? And then you can get the attributed usage. So now we have observability. Now we have cost attribution. How do I enforce AI spending? So I can leverage the cost attribution boundaries that I define. And now I can say that, hey, this tenant only bought X amount of credit. So now I want to restrict. So I can set a budget for that tenant. I can set budget at the key level, at the tenant level, or however you define your attribution boundaries. So there are different ways you can set budgets. You can enforce that these are the only TPMs that are allowed, tokens per minute that are allowed. And then I give all the logs to Vantage, and Rem can explain you what we can do with it.
Exactly. So for a lot of reasons that G was mentioning, like first, what you're getting with a proxy is the ability to swap out this provider. And he was mentioning that at Demandbase, they're using a lot of different providers for a lot of different reasons. Might just be model performance, failover if any of these are down. I know that you guys even do failover for cost reasons and selecting different models very intently with the purpose of cost optimization. So first, having that ability to feed that into a proxy. The ultimate goal, though, is to get down to that per request layer. Again, like we have things like in AWS where they're using the IAM profiles in the cur and adding that in, but as G was mentioning, like they are adding header level metadata to these requests. Like that is information that they need to be both in the request and be getting out on the other side. So getting that per request level attribution is the most important part when it comes to translating your usage into actual observability. And getting that out on the other side is what we do at Vantage. So being able to standardize and normalize that across all of your different providers, being able to tag and attribute and allocate that back across to all of your teams. That's usually where a lot of the traditional FinOps starts, right? Like that is budgeting, that is unit economics, joining it on other telemetry data that's not your usage, and being able to normalize that and standardize it in one place. And then also using the actual technology that we're monitoring to monitor itself, right? We were talking about Claudia and their agent at Demandbase. We have our own agent at AWS, or at Vantage. It is best to use these tools to help you actually monitor these costs. Again, the amount of volume of data that we are looking at is astronomically increasing. For small FinOps practices like a Demandbase with two humans, you need that agent element in there as well. Once you have that, it's very core to centralize all of that and be able to show it back to your teams. This is a little bit more of the traditional route, right? Like we have our UI layer in addition to the agentic access, whether it be MCPs or agents. And so being able to distill this back and show it back to your users is one of the core principles of FinOps to be able to optimize through just understanding your costs, being able to show that over time, show your actual allocation itself, and ensure that you have full coverage of the requests that you're monitoring. Look at things like anomalies and budgets all in one single place, and be able to actually show your teams this.
Yeah. And if you see for us, what I do is I get all the rich tag logs and I give it to Vantage, and this is what we all get. Beautiful dashboard that shows everything we want to. And you remember Claudia, our 24/7 agent. Now, Claudia has access to all of this. All right? So Claudia uses the Vantage MCP, so it has access to everything, all that you see here. So I can actually query Claudia that, hey, can you tell me what is the cost of tenant so-and-so and the user so-and-so for last 7 days? And Claudia will tell me that. Similarly, that anomaly, of course, this is a sample dashboard, but that anomaly, Claudia will know that is an anomaly, right? It can also open whatever Jira issue for that and continue to work. Now, for us, thankfully, we have Vantage, so we just give everything to Vantage. They make a beautiful dashboard. They allow us to do all those things. What if your CFM tool that you are using does not have out-of-the-box integration? What do you do in that case? So I want you to think about focus. This is where you can leverage focus. So what you can do is, if you don't have out-of-the-box integration, most of these LLM proxies, and when I say LLM proxy, you can think about Light LLM, Open Routers, Cloudflare AI gateways. There are many in the market, right? And most of these support open telemetry. So you can either hook it directly to your observability platform and get details out of that, or use Focus. With Focus, you can basically convert all these signals into a Focus schema and then push it to your tool of your choice who supports Focus, and you get similar experience.
Are you doing the Focus mapping or is Vantage?
So no, we do, if we have to. We have a direct integration, so. But generally what happens is, and what I've heard from people is, in Focus mapping, because you might have your own customization, and you want to fit in the Focus schema, because Focus schema is not exactly tuned to what logs you're expecting, right? So I might have lots of tagging, and that can go, everything can go under tag, but then what do I do with it, right? So you want to have a translation layer in between to do all those things before you push to whatever CFM tool you're using. Yeah, sure.
Are you addressing any of the SaaS providers like Cowork, ChatGPT? Are you looking to that data set?
Yes.
Obviously, like LLM and those proxies.
Yes. So for that, so they have OpenAI integration as well. So we can leverage that. And for certain models that we want to track, what we also do is we route them through AWS. And the AWS Bedrock in Cur 2.0, you can also get IAM principal by ID, so you can track that way if you want to. Sounds good? Yeah. So this is the fun stuff, right? Pivot and mature. So remember I was talking about we were scrambling for basic answers. Now we have them, and now our questions are like, our questions are not like, oh, what is our spend? It's like, I know my spend. How do I act on it? So this is where observability to enforcement comes in play. If you see, all the attribution boundaries that we defined help me get all these usability, pattern detection, whatnot, right? So once you get that data, you start observing certain patterns. And based on the patterns, you can say that, hey, this does not look right. The anomaly log that I was talking about before, that's one pattern. Like if one specific tenant is using 100 times more than other tenants, that seems like something we need to investigate, right? So we started going from observability and to enforcement, because let's say that tenant is either not using it as per contracts, or they are using it in a different way, which we didn't expect. So now we have the ability to enforce and put rate limits, budgeting. We can block throttle if they are not following the contract. We can do tons of stuff through enforcement. And this is tokenomics in practice for you. So over a period of time, we started observing patterns. We started seeing, oh, certain agents are just having really large prompts. Then we thought about it, yeah, probably we need to trim the context, or we need to remove unnecessary data out of it. We started seeing retry waste. And what I mean by that is the same kind of questions are incurring cost. So is that a problem with no caching? We also track whether the request went through the cache, not through the cache, so we know what's going on. So maybe it's an issue with the cache, or if we need to do, or there is a bug in the agent that we need to add a backup control. We also saw cases where wrong models were being used. Like, yeah, everybody wants to use the greatest and the latest models, but is that what you want to do? Depending on what your agent is doing, you might want to use cheaper models, and that works as well. And the case of noisy tenant, where I just mentioned, right, like if there's a unwarranted or sudden anomaly of usage, we immediately know. So then we can apply budget rate limits and guardrails. And this is what compounding interest looks like, because then based on all the patterns that we were observing, we started building better agents that were shorter in prompt size, using better models, better in performance, and all the good stuff is what we got from our observability and enforcement. So you'll say, what next for Demandbase, right? Oh, we have observability, we have enforcement, so what? Now, are we done? We are not done. These are complex problems, right? So I mentioned before that, hey, you can do model switching, but model switching, even though Proxy allows you, it's not that easy to just switch directly, because, for example, let's say we have a commitment with AWS, right? If I dynamically keep switching everything to Anthropic, it might be cheaper. I might want to use cheaper models, but hey, what about my commitment? I want to meet my commitment as well. So those kind of decisions are like intricate decisions, finer decisions you want to make. And that's where model switching is complex, and we are working on that. What about credit token cost mapping, right? So if you talk to your product, they are like, oh, we are not selling in dollars. We are not selling in tokens. Nobody understands tokens. We are probably selling it in credits. A customer will buy 100 credit. That translates to X dollars or whatever it is. So this adds another layer of translation that is required, because when I use LLM proxy and when I configure all the budgets, when I do all the observability, it's in dollars, and what they are selling is in credit. So I need to map. Oh, they are only allowed 100 credits, so there has to be certain budget limits that I need to put there. So that is another translation layer that needs to be sorted out. Batch attribution is interesting because we do pipelines. So someone can trigger a pipeline from a prompt. The prompt goes through LLM proxy, but then it leaves the proxy realm, does some backend stuff in a provider, and then comes back with the data, right? Now my proxy will only do cost allocations for that particular prompting and that operation. But what about the backend cost that is going on? So I still have to, if I'm using this as my primary mode to find cost, then I still need to do attribution, batch attribution, where I need to bring in all costs from the backend, hook it up with whatever proxy costs are, and that is my total cost for it. And finally, proxy adoption. This is interesting because Demandbase in general is a shift-left org. Teams create their own accounts. We let them manage it. Everything is through IAC. And then now we introduce a proxy, which is a central thing. Yes, we can have proxy in its own account, but now I'm requiring people to use a certain proxy through a certain account, going outside their account. So this is more of an organizational challenge. And when you're using multiple providers, you will notice that there is no single good way to say that, hey, only requests going through proxy and not directly through account are allowed, right? So there is some level of challenge there. So we are figuring that out too. So these are hard problems, but we are progressing. And for takeaways, Rem, do you want to?
Please, yeah. Cool. So in order to get to where Demandbase is, and if you want to be like G and be more like everything that they are doing to be able to observe their costs, first, again, we talked about the cost normalization. That's always been at the core of FinOps and what Focus is all about. The observability portion is something that is new in the AI space that is not only additive, but essential. If you are going to do per request visibility, if you are going to be adding in additional request metadata that is part of your cost attribution and chargeback process, having an observability strategy that pairs with your FinOps strategy becomes essentially your actual FinOps strategy in itself. You then need to then build on those FinOps practices, right? So the tagging and unit economics of that middleware to be able to justify your costs, allocate your costs, show that back to your team. That's going to be what actually is going to help eventually optimize your spend and get a hold on it. And then again, using something like Claudia to actually make your job easier. As we're going about and looking at these the AI spend, again, like the scale of this data is hard for us to comprehend. And so using agents, using MCPs, using AI native primitives to actually analyze this is going to be what helps you get there. Within Vantage, what does that mean? So as G's mentioned, they are light LLM users. We have integrations with a lot of AI gateways, such as Light LLM and OpenRouter. These are great for not only observability methodologies, but also a lot of the functionality, like model switching that G was mentioning. If you do go with a more traditional observability methodology, you can go with native logs like Bedrock model invocation logs or Datadog. And again, these are things that we pair on top of cloud billing data, such as the IAM profiles in the Career 2.0. You're going to be able to get more granular, more rich per request level attribution than that. And so where do you end up after all of this? First, I mentioned this, but you're going to get optimization through observability. And this has always been a core principle of FinOps, right? If you are able to show your teams exactly what they're spending, if you are able to attribute back your costs to your applications and say what it is that it's costing you money, that is the first step in not only justifying your AI spend, but also just understanding it and being able to wrangle it. We then get to all of this new unit economics that are used to justify your AI spend, whether that is tokens per feature, cost per experiment, cost per PR, tokens per issue. These are all things that teams are now using to actually measure their efficiency in their AI spend. Through a lot of the observability too, you get model comparisons, so you can see some of the efficiency based on your costs as well as your unit economics. And then you get forecasts, alerts, all of the traditional FinOps things that we mentioned. And not to put you on the spot, G, but I know that like these seem fuzzy in principle, but like these are things that you guys have used at Demandbase. And I know that like earlier today you were telling me a little bit of an example about how that happened actually.
Yes, so for all the different so we use it in different ways, like we use all of the MCPs and all the Claudias. We have like agents and everything that help us actually navigate through all of these AI problems in a much easier way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I encourage you to develop your own observability methodology, start from the ground up, and then the FinOps will follow. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Let's go next slide. Next slide for the contact. Yeah.
Hold on one second. All right, question here in the front. Hold on. Talk straight into the box, please.
Thank you. So, beginning of the session, you talked about the COGS and the R&D spend, right? So, in reality, COGS also include AI. So, on the dashboard, I was trying to find how do you distribute that? I mean, do you have something to throw light on it?
Well, I think that first, if you're going to be able to separate that out, like the per request level attributions is very important there, right? Like even if, for example, I mentioned that at Vantage we have our own FinOps agent. We dog food our own agents and MCPs and things like that, and so that is a part of our R&D spend. Like we are actively debugging that and using it for ourselves. So part of the methodology behind the observability and the cost allocation there is that you need insights into that per request basis. Like for us, at Vantage.sh domains all go into our R&D bucket. And so we are intentionally spinning up experiments in that regard. So if you are going to be separating that, that's kind of where like some of the observability comes into play.
And I think this is where I was talking about Demandbase being shift left, right? So we have like dev, stage, prod. The accounts are different itself, right? The projects are different if you're using GCP. So then you can go buy those accounts, the cost of this account, and they can actually look into what is the AI spend in dev, R&D versus what is actual production usage. So you can split it that way. So.
And your dashboard talks about both of them.
Sorry?
And your dashboard does have that view of.
Oh yeah, you can
COGS.
easily filter because in one of our, so in I mentioned about tagging, right? So we also provide a DB, like environment tag, right? So that environment tag also identifies, we can, in the dashboard, they have like amazing filters where you can actually filter by host, we can even filter by account IDs and names. So there are multiple ways to do this.
Thank you. So you mentioned model routing through the proxy based on like cost or availability. Do you or have you run into issues with like output quality or consistency? Or do you have any like,
Yeah.
I guess, are you using that as a proxy or a way to filter it as well?
Yeah, and that is where I was mentioning the last slide where we are still working on a lot of stuff because it's not easy to switch. I mean, yes, it is easy. I can just provide the model and I can switch. But then how do you compare the performances, right? And is it because of Coda or is it really some issue with where the model is been delivering? So that is hard. And once you have a proxy, unless you can feed into that matrix live, that dynamic switching is always tricky. So right now, our developers have choice of models, and we know our commitments towards different providers. So we kind of have the backups of if this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Like if backups in the sense like, let's say somebody makes a request and they just see an error page, right? That means that model is not responding, then just move to something else. So extreme dynamic measuring performance, quality, everything, that's hard, and we are thinking of ways to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Model routing question. If a user or a tenant is close to their budget, can you change the model routing not to choose expensive models anymore?
That's a great question. So the thing is, it depends on your agent. You cannot switch it specific for a tenant, right? Because we have multi-tenant agent, right? So let's say they are right on their budget. Can I use some lesser? So it doesn't happen at the tenant level. It happens at the agent level. So in short, no, we don't have that right now. But that's an interesting way to think too.
Would that be a good practice, though? I mean, your quality is going to come down, and you won't know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why we are still maturing. We are growing. We are not there yet. Because then you need to split agent tenant-wise, and then that is another challenge in itself. So.
You talk about building like semantic rules in terms of having your gateway be the provider, but then have your own router that, based on whatever the prompt looks like, it sends it to the right.
Yes, but that is where I was talking about the commitment, right? We have existing commitments. So unless we exhaust that or meet that, any money I'm giving is free money, right? So that's why currently we are tying it specifically to where our commitments are so that we use that up first and then think about other, yeah.
The question is on the telemetry that you're collecting, including the tags, etc.
Yeah.
But what's the role of engineering to actually support you to make that happen before you pass it to Vantage?
Oh, so as I said, right, Vantage has a direct plugin. So they have an integration with Light LLM, which I can use, and it directly does that for me. But let's say you don't have that, then what happens is most proxy, they have endpoints where you can collate all these logs, and then you can either flatten that JSON, generally it's in JSON, so you can flatten them, focus on what exactly you want, and then push it to whichever system you are pushing. So if that is the case, then you need some layer of doing the translation after getting the logs. Yeah.
That's done by FinOps or engineering?
That is done by us if we have to do that.
So engineering has nothing to do from the tags perspective?
No, so this all is like the CCOE does that for them.
Or respective COEs?
Yeah, so we have just one team, so the FinOps team, so we do all these translation for them because we have like different teams and then we are kind of the central team when it comes to doing all these kind of things.
I think often though, like what we've seen is that, especially for maybe the non-gateway solutions, like if you are using Bedrock, that's where like their request metadata, which is essentially done in code at time of prompt. And so you can actually dictate that through code in ways to actually selectively add tags or request metadata. And so there are often times where I think that the engineers through code abstractions are dictating that metadata that is put on an invocation. And then that's where other FinOps practices, our platform can ingest that. And so I find as well that that's very helpful to have them involved in that.
Rem, where can people learn more about this?
Yeah, so at Vantage, you can find us at vantage.sh online. We also have a booth down in the area down there. We'd love to talk to you guys more about our platform. And then G at Demandbase.
Yeah, so I think the feedback form has a way to connect to us, me and Michael on LinkedIn. So feel free to ask any questions, or if you have more questions, we can talk after this as well.
All right. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.